The Lost Signals present
The Joke on the Children,
a Bon Mott's Halloween series.
What's up, ninjas?
Celebrating
Left turn.
horror
Sequels.
with in-depth analysis,
do I look like someone who cares what God thinks?
adult content,
It's okay, he just wanted his machete back!
adult language,
Well, that's just what we call pillow talk, baby.
and spoilers.
If he dies, I'll be a murderer.
Join us.
Gotta love these parallel universes.
Hello and welcome to MOTS-O-Ween. My name is Rich Perry and I'm joined here by Stephen Hermosi,
Hey, I'm here.
Ian Manzer,
When is a door not a door?
Scott Thurlow,
When we're raising hell.
and we are reviewing Hellraiser Bloodline. I think Ian's got a funny log line for us.
Portrait of Adam Scott.
Yes, it's perfect. And if you've
I
seen
like
this
it.
movie, you'll see why. Maybe we'll
And
tell
if you don't
why.
agree,
Maybe,
go to
maybe we'll
hell.
talk about that scene.
We will.
Scott, you got us with intro, body, and conclusion?
Yeah, all right. So I guess technically this is the fourth movie in the Hellraiser series, although it doesn't actually spell that out. So like you said, just colon Bloodline. So we start off with a guy in space who is, if you're familiar with the Hellraiser previous installations, he's using a robot hand to manipulate the lamentation box in order to summon Pinhead and his demons, ostensibly to destroy them. And quickly we find out through a series of flashbacks, which basically the whole movie, that he's a descendant of the original creator of the box that originally summoned the Cenobites. And we find out like the whole history of, I guess it's fleshed out some of the universe of Hellraiser. I don't know. More than we've seen before, I suppose. And it's basically the tale of his, this movie was in 1996. So the modern day equivalent, like his XP there living in that age who, figured out and was awakened. His call to adventure was his blood call to him to defeat the Cenobites and Pinhead, and eventually sort of does so. And then we've cut back to the year 2147 in space, where he finally uses the power of solar array satellites to summon the light configuration to destroy Pinhead and his minions. And that's pretty much it.
So I thought, hold on, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say at the beginning of this, if you have seen the previous movies, this doesn't make any sense. Because
I mean, it makes some sense.
Does it?
Yes.
It makes as much sense as it can.
As any.
Sure.
I'm going to say this. It plays by its own rules in the movie, but doesn't play by the rules on the greater Hellraiser.
All of the Hellraiser rules. That is very much true.
But we're also doing left turn movies this Halloween.
So perfect.
And this one is a left turn because it's a period piece. A distinctly 90s horror movie.
Well, it's three period pieces, really.
And a space adventure. Well, or I guess like an alien type
sort of
horror movie. So
It's like
all over
Alien
the place.
Resurrection.
It's like 1/3 of three movies.
Like I said, it's three period pieces. One being the distant past, 18th century. One being modern 90s,
What was modern day?
contemporary to when it was made, and one being the far future.
And doesn't do any of them well.
Well, we'll see.
But we'll talk about that.
So I guess I'll give my score. I'm going probably with a 1, I suppose, maybe a 2. I'll give intro a 1.
Ooh, 2 would be strong.
Well, I'll tell you why in a second.
Please.
I think 1, the intro, like, it was a fine setup. And in fact, like, more entertaining. Yes, to be fair, we're MSTKing this movie the entire fucking time, so
Yes,
sure.
that's correct.
But I still thought, like, again, within, like, my general knowledge of what I know about the Hellraiser franchise and remembering what I've seen of them, it was a fine setup. In fact, it was more solid than maybe they could have had or did have in the past. So, like, I like the 17th century stuff. A toy maker essentially is contracted by an evil magician, by an Aleister Crowley type character.
God. That sounds so ridiculous when you retell it.
I understand.
Yes, it does. And you know what?
But I bought into it, Rich. Like, I guess I'm saying.
I know. Like it made sense when we were watching it.
Yeah,
but
and I'll probably give the body a 0. Like, I don't think anyone might argue that. The one I'm debating on is in conclusion, because I kind of like the last 2 minutes of the movie.
Well, because the containment
field thing,
of the story was the 2147.
Yeah, it was a good bookmark.
Yeah.
So, like, that, I thought that was fine. Again, fine enough. Was it amazing? No, of course not. Nothing about this movie is per se amazing. But narratively, I thought, like, they bookended it fairly well. And I did like the intro, like the setup at least. So go ahead, guys.
So I think there's an interesting way to divide up this score because there's 3 time periods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. True.
And so I'm going to give past, present, future, each,
Okay.
Each 1 point?
0 or 1. So I actually think the past, for as ridiculous as it was, and we'll talk, like that magician character was eating scenery left and right.
He was summoning scenery and then devouring.
He was like a Pac-Man of
He
scenery.
was literally picking it out of his teeth with his long ass fingernails.
Yeah.
But I kind of loved it because it reminded me of like the over the top Dracula type.
Yeah. I think we said that.
Yeah. And here's the things: I didn't care about the merchants, which is the main protagonist.
The
throughout
bloodline,
story.
the titular bloodline.
Yeah. But I kind of like the setup of the past, and I wish they had dwelled more on the past and future. They had cut out the complete present, and by cutting out the complete present, I'm going to give that a 0. I think that was the weakest part of the film.
Yeah.
I think that was they really wanted to do the past and the future, but budgetary reasons, perhaps. They
stupid studio reasons, perhaps.
It stretched out, and it didn't have. I felt forced for a present day confrontation there when there was enough in the past and future to have held their own plot line. Now, you're right. The future I am wavering on. But here's where it comes down to. It's a horror film. They introduce a lot of stock soldier characters to kill off in different Cenobite ways. But I didn't care about any of them. They were never developed at all.
That was the quickest amount of kills that I've ever seen in succession before.
They had a good turnaround rate.
It was like 5 minutes of straight
in real time, because they show a clock
and
at the beginning
and an hour of garbage.
But here's the thing: is they show a clock, so it's 23 minutes or something like that when the guards start being killed, and it's 6 minutes by the time the last guard is killed. So in that span, everyone in the movie time died within the span of less than 20 minutes.
Other than the 2 characters you knew from the first scene that were going to survive.
Yeah.
Sure. So right? I might give it a 0. I might give it a 0 for that, but I'm going to give it a 1 for the past scene.
So you're going 1 overall of the 3.
Yes.
I'm pretty strongly in the 0 camp on this. The past is the absolute strongest point. I think we all agree on that.
Yes.
I don't think that there's much debate about that. And I could possibly give that a 1. And I think that they should have. I think that they didn't give enough time to the past or the future.
True. Definitely future.
And they had, and for some stupid ass reason, somebody decided that the 90s, Adam Scott with his stupid Lestat haircut, from not an Interview with the Vampire, but the Vampire Lestat, like where he's a rock and roller or whatever.
Queen of the Damned.
That was the look they had to give him.
Yeah, but that was in the past too, if you recall. That wasn't in the 90s.
No, that was when they got to the present, and he just looked like an idiot.
Adam Scott has lived for hundreds of years.
Regardless,
Sure.
There was zero explanation why he had lived for hundreds of years.
Yes.
That is true.
Demons, because of Cenobites.
Yeah, because of demons, right?
Yep.
I just the initial past thing with flaying this woman and stealing her skin and putting a Cenobite in her was mildly interesting, but I don't think that there was enough there for me to give it a 1. Like it was just like a very lazy movie. It was just a very lazy movie to me, and they couldn't be bothered to explain anything or like give an actual good backstory to any of the 3 plots that they had throughout this movie. So I'm probably going to give Intro Body Conclusion a 0.
I'm still going with a 1. As you said, the past, I think, was the most interesting part, and that's probably why I'm giving a 1. Because, I bought into it, like, just enough. I suspended my disbelief, and that was fine. I guess the issue is the ending, like, as we agreed, like it was super abrupt. Even it cuts the credits like
It was very,
what?
very abrupt.
You know what? That's not even the one thing that bothered me about the ending. It was the fact that they were so close to Earth. Like, it made it, for the entire movie, it made it seem like they were, like, in the middle of space
like
somewhere.
nowhere, yeah.
Like, out,
like,
far from the reach of anything else.
They're like, hey, we could almost touch Earth from here.
And, like, as soon as the box completes, they turn, and then the camera pans, and they're, like,
see Earth,
about to land.
True. So, yeah, I guess, yeah, like I said, I was wavering, but I think it's enough to, I'll only give the intro a 1. Conclusion is getting a default, if not like solid 0.
So Scott, you're 0. I mean, you're a 1.
Yep.
Ian, you're a 1.
Yes.
I'm also a 1.
You're a 1. I'm a 0.
What's your 1 for, Rich?
My 1's for the past and the intro.
Yeah.
All right. I think the past is. I think we're all solidly placed in the past.
If you're going to give it a 1, it should
Other
be for
than
that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because, like, Future didn't have enough. Like, I was worried about
Exactly.
the amount of times
that was my problem. I could have given the past or the future a 1, but neither one of them had enough to them, and they had so much
potential, perhaps.
Because I thought
they had so much. Like the problem was that like all of the potential was like immediately exhausted by the lack of cohesion between scenes and between like what's going on, and.
Yeah, I mean, I get you.
That bothered me.
That's probably more of a style, Steve, but you're absolutely right about that. It was jarring at times.
Sure. If they had cut out the whole like present day, like 96 story,
yeah, fuck that shit,
and like spent more time in the future of like these guards being murdered one by one as he's trying to tell her the story to convince her.
Yeah,
that would have been fantastic.
That would have been great.
Absolutely.
And that's
if you allow more time, you make the cuts actually make. Here's the thing: this movie felt like it was a director that didn't know what he was doing.
Well, that's why I had the fake name.
In between. All right, exactly. Alan Smithee directed this movie, by the way. And if anybody knows who Alan Smithee is...
films.
Yeah. If anybody knows who Alan Smithee is,
he makes a lot of
you'll
films.
realize what's going on. Look it up. Look up Alan Smithee.
Anyway,
it felt like every scene that could have meant something was just ruined by the cut to the next scene. And like... having no cohesion between each scene. And that really bugged me, and that's why I can't give it a 1 for anything.
Yeah, I got you. I feel you.
All right, so it's 3 1s and a 0.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes on to me with themes, which I think is don't take commissions from crazy French
creepy
magicians.
I don't know, man. Like
I learned that the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
Would you make a box yourself?
As have we all.
It's an oddly specific theme.
It sure is. True.
I think it fits for this movie because anything else.
What else is there?
Yeah, there really isn't anything else. Like the problem that starts off is because of this, and he unintentionally curses his bloodline. So I guess sins of the fathers.
Like Castlevania. The merchants,
the Belmonts, and the merchants,
are both cursed to fight this demon throughout time until one in the distant future succeeds. I don't know if they pulled no, they didn't pull it off well. But that was even in the name Bloodline. It was about the going through fighting an evil through time.
Future Castlevania.
That's why I
have
have
Bloodline subtitle too.
And I really wanted to give this a 1, but I can't. Like, and here's why: because this movie failed so miserably to make the easiest of themes apparent and like good, right? Like all it has to do is like make a tie through these bloodlines. Make a tie between these people, like actually matter between the past, the present, and the future, and all it needs to do is say, "Hey, there is some kind of tying bind between all these bloodlines," and it doesn't even make that attempt. I don't think
it basically hand waves it.
A few lines of dialogue, and maybe one extra scene could have changed my score on this.
I agree,
because it never is. It actually established that. It's not a tradition of them to kind of hunt this down. No. It's almost by accident that the next generation
start having nightmares.
But you know what? That's not even necessarily a bad thing. They could have done that well. Just the fact that like by accident you are born into this bloodline of like having to hunt this down. But the movie never
expanded upon it.
Yeah, it never
explored that. Yeah.
Breaks into that, and it never tries to expand upon it. It never tries to explore it in any way. And like that is a huge mistake to me. It could have literally taken like 5 lines of dialogue in this movie to like talk about that or like explore it a little bit, and it doesn't even try. And that's a huge problem for me as far as theme goes. And I really wanted to give this movie a 1 on themes because it's in the title. You have this very obvious way of making a good tie-in throughout the ages on this movie that you're trying to make a movie about tying things in throughout the ages, and they just never do it. It's really frustrating.
Nah, I mean, you guys are right. I don't much more say I agree. I'm going to give us in general this season a 1 for rewriting movies to make them better.
I agree.
So, but this movie could have been better, as we just said, but just wasn't. So I'll have to give themes a default 0 or even like a solid 0.
Absolutely.
Per earlier. But you're right. There was so much untapped potential that they could have explored, could have like done something cool with it. Could have, you're right, Steve-O, had it flow more. It
would have been so easy.
Had it tie in more,
that's,
but yeah.
That's my problem with it. Is like it's not hard. All you have to do is like make a passing attempt at it.
I noticed
like,
a trend of?
It didn't even do that.
Like all of his ancestors were like killed by like not knowing what they were really dealing with, just kind of stumbling onto death.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
That's kind
accidentally
of
fighting
that's
demons.
kind of its own interesting theme, and if they had actually touched upon that would have been fine too.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
No, you're right.
In fact, it's implied that the 3 we saw are, in a sense, the only
ones who ever saw it.
That ever fought the...
Right. There could have... And there should have been, at least 7 or 8 generations that have dealt with this. And if you had like gone through and like... You know what? You know what would have been interesting? If they like just flashed boom, 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 boom through like people getting killed by Cenobites
montage,
after having a child. Like, it could have been a 2-minute scene for each one of them.
And him just like...
And that would have been...
like Pinhead just like getting more and more frustrated because he's like just unable to like catch these
That
kids.
would have given it a 1 for a theme for me.
It could have been like Baby's Day Out.
Right?
Yeah. See? Again, we've been killing it. Hollywood, you heard it here first. We're writing everything the best.
Get your shit together, Hollywood.
But in this... from the movie, what was in the actual movie, it's going to be a 0, I think.
Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, go on. Oh, me. Sorry.
You go on.
Introduce me, please.
So that was like 0s all around?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Steve-O, you're up with antagonist.
All right. So, Pinhead, I suppose, is an antagonist. What's her face?
She's an antagonist.
Angelique.
The demon princess, Cenobite princess, I guess.
That came out of left field for me.
Agreed.
Like,
and that's why we chose this movie, Rich, apparently.
Yeah,
Angelique was actually... not terrible.
Sure.
Her motives were her motives were pretty well defined.
I mean, they made sense as well. Yeah.
You knew kind of what she was. You knew kind of what she was going for. And she was well defined right from the beginning when she was flayed and then turned into a Cenobite in the beginning. This might be one of my few ones. I'm not exactly sure right now. I'm wavering. She is kind of she's an interesting character because she's like very driven by her own demon soul, I guess.
She has a goal.
But also she is a slave to to Adam Scott for a lot of this movie. I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Well, I think the dynamic between Pinhead and Angelique, which from what I understand was supposed to be a kind of conflict between the two.
Yeah, or again, another theme, like a running thing is like we looked up some of the original, the changes they made from the original script versus the actual product, and things like this happened. So go on. So you see a little bit of that in the movie, and you brought up the fact that she was a slave to Adam Scott, but then she becomes, in a way, a slave to Pinhead. Right. She can't escape. As much of an antagonist as she is,
despite the fact that he keeps calling her princess, he is lording over her.
He's in control the entire time over her. And this is not a male figure that she can take out like she eventually does Adam Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a creature more powerful than she is and holds. And I like the complexity of that relationship, even though I think it could have been more complex.
Yeah.
But
it could have been better for sure.
But for this film, it's more than it deserves. And this is one of the things that came out of this that I liked. And the fact that you got to see two Cenobites who have different methods, different like kind of world interpretations, different beliefs in how to.
Oh my god! You know, now that you say that, I wish that they had gone more into that. Here's the thing: this movie is like a comedy of errors insofar as like how it's written. Like you could have done so much more with it, and it just wasn't. It just didn't happen.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and seeing the relationship through time would have been interesting too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the montage thing you were saying.
Yeah, but you do get to see that. She starts off completely in control. She brings Pinhead into the world in the present day. And at the end, she is just another one of his minions. So she has actually an arc in this. So I'm going to give it a 1 for that.
I mean, I largely agree to an extent to things both of you guys have said. So I'm probably going to go with the default one because, like what I was going to say is Pinhead is probably one of the most recognizable horror villains in the past decade or couple generation, we'll say. And like usually he's pretty effective because this probably goes to like dialogue and so forth, but just in general, he's usually an effective, intimidating, menacing presence opposed to whatever hero is in any given Hellraiser film. But I do agree that Angelique's character is pretty interesting as well. You don't often see that, or probably didn't before, like I said, I can recall in the franchise. And yes, of course, like we can say this about almost any aspect and facet of this film. They could have explored that further and made it more interesting and complex. But for what was there, it's more than I actually expected out of it. And like I said, we were basically joking throughout the whole movie. But even so, I do agree that was an interesting arc, as you said, E, for her. And I think they do share antagonist duties. In fact, she shows up first, well before Pinhead does.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she has, like, her motivation is clear. And she knows, like, it's funny because it's almost like they want the same goal, but they're trying to go about it in different ways. So they disagree about how to permanently open the doorway to hell.
He's all for pain. She's all for temptation.
Yeah. So, like, that's interesting. That's an interesting, maybe sub-theme that they could have explored. Didn't really all too much, if at all.
Like, that's the huge.
Right. There's a lot of missteps. But I'm just saying, for what was there and for how they portrayed them, I think I'm going to give them a soft or solid 1 for antagonist.
Oh, man. It would have been cool to see, like, her crew of Cenobites.
How she would have done it.
Yeah.
Right? Versus his.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's so much they could have done with this. Whatever.
Sure. But I'm still giving them a 1.
I'm going to give it a 1.
I'm going
to give it a soft 1.
All right.
Ian, you're up with Protag.
Unfortunately, a 0. Because
I agree. Go on.
I really like what they could have done with this. Like we've been saying throughout
this entire... I feel like there's a ton of, like...
It's actually a clever idea.
Possible.
Having the same actor... Yeah. I mean, you've seen it before in other films, but the same actor playing different generations throughout time. It in the books should work, but it doesn't in this film because I don't think they devote enough time to develop any of these characters. And theoretically, I suppose they wanted to develop the character, the family line over an individual within that line, but that doesn't work in practice.
In fact, he was at least interesting part of the member of the family throughout the stories, throughout the 3 timelines.
Which one?
Absolutely.
Just him all 3 times?
The 90s guys.
Perhaps the space one who is sacrificed everything to destroy Pinhead. Kind of the
but he's still so like you don't understand enough about him.
Exactly.
Like you don't understand enough about any of the 3 versions of him at all.
Well, you understand the most about the first merchant. That's it.
Yes.
I mean, you get to see his motivations for it. You get to see him interact with friends and colleagues.
No, who friends and colleagues?
Oh, the doctor.
The doctor.
Okay.
And his wife.
Yeah. The doctor and his wife, yes.
Like,
correct.
I get
but like, it's still a very shallow interaction.
Yes, it's a surface exploration.
See, when you define a character by being ordained to have a role through his family line. In a sense, you shouldn't sacrifice still character development,
Right.
but I think there's a temptation because his motivation becomes something abstract.
It's like all
and not
encompassing.
definite.
Yeah.
And I think that the problem, not the problem, but like I think that we are giving this film too much credit by saying that it didn't have enough time to develop this. Granted, there wasn't much time in the film devoted towards any given character. However, I think that in the given time that they had, so like say that there's a half an hour for each character because it's an hour and a half film, and it was pretty much evenly divided, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
That should be enough. A half an hour should be enough to at least give a little bit of understanding towards each one of these characters. And it's not. Like if it's well written, there should be enough time in a half an hour, short stories about each one of these characters to
I see what you're saying.
Understand more about them than we understand in this movie.
See, what's weird is and this is, I guess, going back to the narrative of it. The problem is that they have such a complex history of the of the cube and how in the device to stop the cube from destroying Pinhead, that devote a ton of time to developing why he's doing what he's doing, or the methods he's going to do at stopping this, because it's very complex. You have to give a lot of time to the antagonists because that's what people are here to see, and thus, if it were vignettes where you're focused on the main character, but the main character is actually, in a sense, a secondary character in his own movie.
But that's an issue of the movie. It's not an issue. It's not an issue of that's not enough time to devote to that to tell the story in and of itself. It's an issue that this movie couldn't figure out how to do that.
Yeah. It's the glut of
other better movies.
Or perhaps the original script did, but then the changes shaved it away. I mean, you guys are getting pretty much right. I agree. It would have been nice if we saw that, if they were able to do that or decided to, but whatever happened, that isn't the case. So while that potential again was there, it wasn't enough. It wasn't fleshed out, wasn't rounded out enough. So therefore it fell flat. It felt one dimensional, even if you had three basically iterations of the same character played by the same actor, in three different timelines.
All of them have equal importance.
Yeah,
which amounts to absolutely nothing.
Which somehow was less than the sum of its parts, Rich, in a sense. So I'm gonna have to agree, pretty much 0 for protagonist because of that.
No, it would have been great to have the bloodline. To have the bloodline as a genetic memory style thing. What they kind of did,
like Assassin's Creed style.
Or
Look, you wrote this movie better than they did in 2 seconds.
Well, as soon as it awakens, they remember all the mistakes leading up to their first death. So you can have a montage. You can have a montage, just trial and error.
Yep.
Of just certain things working and carrying.
We're just
over.
offhandedly jerking off better ideas than this movie has had. So
this is getting a 0 for me.
Yeah.
How did you not figure this out, guys? Write a better story.
It was the 90s, dude. It was a more naive time.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Scott, you're over supporting.
All right, so off the bat, I think I decided during the screening of this film, I liked 2 characters a lot, and Ian alluded to one before I mentioned one. The doctor in the basically the 18th century doctor who gives a very short but really well done speech about it's now the age of science. So the original Mr. Merchant goes to tell him about basically, hey, doctor, friend of mine, I guess, I created a box that summons hell demons. Now I have to go stop it. And doctor's like, heaven is gone. We've killed God. Heaven doesn't exist. Now that there's hell. Science is now the new age of reason. But if you really think that's true, why don't you just go build another box that reverses the magic of the first?
So great. But I love it because they combine the body horror, Clive Barker's body horror with the 1700s doctor.
That was the best. He's just chopping some dead person's
old school,
arm.
chest splitter. That was fine. And I guess the other secondary character that I enjoyed, or at least thought was okay, were, alright, well, there's 2 of them, I guess. Well, maybe 3, if you count the twin cop guys.
Okay.
Who are, just there real quickly.
They were actually good comic relief.
But also, I guess Adam Scott's character / Jock was, amusing, I suppose. I enjoyed...
Stupid fucking hair was great.
That's great, but, I kind of enjoyed his character. I liked how, he was the magician, the other guy. the original French magician who hires the toy maker to build the Cenobite box, who I guess his whole plan all along was to basically summon demons from hell, and he needed that. But Jock, aka Adam Scott, was his like I guess henchman, helper, like acolyte guy,
magician's apprentice.
Yeah, his apprentice. So after the magician himself gets like murdered, and Angelique comes out, we flash to Adam Scott and her having like a demonic love affair. Like he's just like controlling her, using her for sex, I suppose, and whatever else he needs. Mm-hmm. So like I thought that was sort of an interesting little turn.
What else does he need?
I don't know. But like he basically became like at first
she was so mad in the present. She's like all he's been doing is just like having sex.
Furious that he was using her to have sex.
But I just thought it was like a kind of a funny, amusing thing.
Furious too,
and an interesting turn to be like he was like a scared
Adam Scott.
He was like a scared little like, oh, I'm a little apprentice. Like, no, my master died because he summoned demons. Now I'm just going to take over. And
I'm pretty sure
I think he killed him.
Oh, you think? See, I didn't get out of that. I thought it was Cenobites.
That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I thought it was Cenobites doing it to the magician.
He like ordered the demoness to kill his master so that he could have sex with her.
All right. You know what?
I think
that actually makes him a better character than in that sense.
Better?
A more interesting one. One that I like better than.
Sure.
The magician.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to give to you. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed every time he was just overacting. I don't know.
Like once, maybe twice.
Like, 2 or 3 times.
He's got like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of screen time.
Most of the past.
Yeah.
But he was talking like this the entire time, and like,
very over the top.
Oh, he was so creepy.
Fantastic. Yeah,
just like and like especially his first scene, just bathed in red light.
Yeah,
and just like you could tell he's going to kill her.
Yeah, it's something bad is about to happen. So like those two probably equal one. Like the modern guy's modern Mr. Merchant, 90s Mr. Merchant wife, and like she was there, his kid was there. I guess like you said, like all the other squad, like the Space Marine squad in the future.
The magician also had a ridiculous amount of makeup on.
Yes, well, we'll speak about that in style, I suppose.
That's what you did when you were a magician in the 1700s.
Apparently.
Anyways.
No one else had that nearly that amount of makeup on. He was set apart.
Yeah.
He's theatrical.
I'll have to
he was.
put my vote in for Carducci.
The Dooch.
Fair enough.
The Dooch.
He actually had the most character arc of like all the little squad mates.
Did he?
Yes, because everyone else had like 0.
Because they all died immediately.
The only reason he had more character development
because of that name
is because Rimmer specifically asked that they have to go back for him.
Also, what kind of fucking name is Rimmer? Please.
I don't know what to tell you.
Anyway,
the other ones.
I'm gonna give it
because it couldn't be Ripley. That's why.
Yeah.
A soft 1.
It's an XP.
I'm gonna give it a soft 1 because there were enough
solid ones,
middling to decent secondary characters to make me enjoy them.
Not pretty much agree, like I said, and the ones I mentioned were the ones I thought were standout.
Scott and like you both said all of my favorites.
Yeah.
So.
And
you said everyone.
Yeah. I mean, there weren't many, but yeah, one though for me officially.
Steve-O, you didn't like the black guy who dies first?
That's a very weird first death.
Loaded question
for the black guy. And
it didn't even seem like a death. I thought they were turning him into a Cenobite.
That's what I thought too.
And I thought they were just going to start adding them to their roster as they went on.
I expected that for sure, Rich.
Yeah, that would have been better.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that either. Again,
and then they just killed him.
Wasted potential.
Well, they did pump him full of the blue liquid, right?
Who, the black guy?
No, that was the twins.
Oh,
that was the twins.
Right.
Yeah, the blue liquid was very
no
confusing to me
sense.
as well.
They couldn't.
A lot of this movie doesn't make any goddamn sense.
But we are giving secondary 1. It seems like sweet.
Secondary, I'll give it a 1. I'll give it a soft 1. But I'll give it a 1.
All right.
So it goes on to me with dialogue.
Hell yeah!
I loved every second that Pinhead was speaking. Everything out of his mouth was fucking gold. Even when he ran out of things to say, it was just kind of like floundering to fill the time. It was fantastic.
It was still great.
That's a bold statement.
I mean, I agree. Like, I don't have much more to say, but the thing is, that's almost always, again, going to be the case in a Hellraiser movie because he gets all like the epic, basically, we said apocalypse speeches, like more or less. So, like, it's always going to be epic, over the top, like, you think I care what God thinks, etc., like all that shit. So it almost like rises above all the other stale, bland-ass style, like everyone else is saying. So I'm probably going to give it a 1 outright for that, and I'll let you guys go out.
I'm going to give it a 1 because it's his downfall. Pinhead would have survived, won the day if he stopped giving speeches.
He wasn't too busy.
Stop talking and just kill the motherfucker.
Yeah, true.
I loved
You're right.
how, like, as soon as he launched...
Maybe not, though.
As soon
He
as
would have been stuck there
As soon as he
still.
saw the video screen of Earth, and the way this happened, it was almost like...
It was like,
future merchant.
look at Earth over there.
Yeah, like future merchant knew this is what was going to set off one of his monologues. Where he just like reaches over and just like kind of flips
maybe
a
he
switch.
did.
Like, boop. He's like, such beauty, isn't it?
Maybe that was all part of the plan, and maybe the script incorporated it, although I doubt it.
No, I do think it was part of his plan because
As soon as he
his Merchant's end game, Dr. Merchant, was all about tricking Pinhead into speeches.
I mean, I'll buy
amazing.
it. I'll buy it.
It's like, and especially like you could tell because as soon as he turned around for that split second,
I got something
he
to
just
say
like
about
almost
this.
cuts himself off because he notices that no one's there anymore. He just like Batman sketch dipped.
Yeah.
And is now hiding in the ship.
No, it was a hologram, if you recall.
No. The
first time.
time.
You're right.
He just runs away in the middle of his speech. Yeah.
That's
He turns away and
then
like,
the second time
looks
it's a
at Earth
hologram.
and listen.
Best way to defeat an egotistical villain ever is to just turn your back on his speech.
One second. I think that's what's been passed down through generations. Is like he gives speeches.
It's in the blood.
It's like all of his nightmares have like bits and pieces of like his previous deaths,
So
and like
bad.
Pinhead, it cuts to Pinhead giving like this long monologue over the bloodbath.
Every horrific vision of Hell Nightmare that you see is like there's one where he's like Pinhead just like giving a lecture and he's like, God Christ almighty.
Son of a. He turns around and nobody left in his class.
Yeah. So I do like that. That's really funny. But I'm definitely still giving dialogue a 1 because of the overtop nature of it. And also the magician's dialogue.
So
Yes.
Pinhead does have some good lines. I'll give it that. Most of the dialogue in this movie, I don't know if you guys noticed, is fucking terrible.
Oh, I have no
It's
idea.
fucking awful.
You guys were talking through most of it.
Exactly. I did because we were talking over it.
Yeah, the reason we were talking through it was
I
because it was
understand.
fucking terrible dialogue. And like, it's very difficult for me to give this a 1 because Pinhead has 7 good lines in the movie.
It's more than 7. But
I don't know if it's more than 7. I think it's
doesn't matter.
about
It's
7.
much more than
I see what you mean, Steve-O, though.
First of all, the twins, with their moment of levity, was decent.
I don't know about I don't know about that. Like I think that it
Oh,
was.
come on, you laughed.
I think that it was. Hold on.
Yeah.
I think that it was
Hold
kind
on.
of funny.
Steve wasn't speaking enough. He needs to speak some more. Go ahead.
I have not spoken enough.
Mm-hmm.
Per Scott. I think that it was kind of funny, but it was not like good dialogue. Like,
I think that's why. Well, that's why it was funny in my opinion.
all right,
campy stuff.
but that's not.
It walks a fine line, I guess I'll say.
It does. So, like the thing with the walking the fine line is like a lot of the dialogue is awful between the merchants and their wives.
Yes.
Between like the merchants and what's her face?
Angelique.
I actually thought Angelique's dialogue was solid.
Angelique's dialogue is not solid. Angelique's dialogue is spotty.
Hmm.
Pinhead's dialogue is solid.
All right.
That's the only solid dialogue in this movie, as far as I can tell.
Yes, but
Or as far as I'm concerned.
it's weird because I do agree, but it's just that his dialogue overshadows so much of the
It's good.
the bland
It's,
shit. Like I said,
like
so.
you said, it's very like
All right.
Apocalypse from X-Men. Like it's like Apocalypse from X-Men, from the movie. Not as good as Apocalypse from X-Men the cartoon.
Yes.
Right? Like that's just next level shit.
Do you remember what I gave X-Men Apocalypse for dialogue? Did I give it a 1 or a 0?
I do not remember offhand.
I will give it whatever you gave it for that.
You may have agreed with me, but
if you can remember.
I think I would have given it a 1 for Apocalypse.
I think you
I might have convinced you to do that, but you might not have
I
done
think
it.
you probably gave it a 1. You know what? Because I think Ian gave Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse a 1, I will give this a 1 for Pinhead's dialogue.
All right. Damn right.
Fair enough.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Sound fair?
That sounds fair.
Because it sounds completely ridiculous to me. But I'm going to go with
No,
it.
well, I was going to say.
You're trusting my taste.
No, I like it. I like that that avenue, Steve. And I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that
it makes sense. Like Pinhead saved this movie.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I said.
I mean, I feel like Pinhead saves all these movies. I haven't even seen them.
I'm pretty sure I would have said that to you on the. Or
Most
did
of them.
maybe on the X-Men Apocalypse review that if nothing else, his dialogue like gets the one by default.
And if I remember anything from X-Men Apocalypse, is that a lot of the other dialogue was terrible.
Yes.
Sure, or bland.
The
at
only
least.
thing I remember from that is Apocalypse and Sansa Stark being terrible.
Yes.
Sorry. But
Well,
Yeah, well, she's not a great actress.
Pinhead still gets a 1 regardless.
Yes.
It seems
Anyway,
of anything else.
Brings us to Steve-O's style.
I'm giving this a 3. All right, I'm sorry. The style of this movie could have been better in every single aspect. I think. I think that it is not a great horror movie. It's not scary at any point. In fact, there's a jump scene that's a telegraph jump scene that is, for a telegraph jump scene, not good, which is very bad.
It's like doubly damaged.
They really don't let it play out to make it a legit jump scare.
Exactly, and I think we said the exact thing when we were watching it. Rich. Yeah.
That's bad. There's not good cohesion between scenes. We've already talked about this a little bit. There's,
Odd cuts.
as far as I can tell, no score or no real. Maybe there's a score, but I don't remember it.
That's funny. Now that you mention it, I don't remember music at all. But there must have been.
And there's no soundtrack to be spoken of.
Yeah.
I just don't think that the style of this movie is very good.
No, there was a score because I remember the music swelled at a point I was that they wanted me to be scared at. And I remember acknowledging that they went, that they did that. Yeah. But nonetheless.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, I'll make one very case for, if I'm playing devil's advocate, here it is. I really like the fact that in the 90s story, Merchant's modern day XP was an art designer, or like an architect, I guess. So he's at an award show, or like getting an award for his design. And there's like what he designed was huge, giant, like modern art style versions of the fucking box.
Yeah.
Like that was funny, but everything else, like the cuts were weird. It was strange, jarring, odd. The effects were like okay at best. Yes, Pinhead's makeup is still always going to be fine,
except for that goddamn down pin in the middle of his lip. It bugs me every time.
All right. Gotcha.
Fuck that guy.
But
fuck whoever did that.
I mean, like, it's almost Carpenter-esque, but not even to that degree, and much later than a lot of Carpenter stuff. So, yeah, just in general, I might get a default 0, but I just can't give enough credit for what it did have, and the things that it misstepped on were a lot more noticeable than what it did actually, like, do well.
Right.
So, the guy who directed this works in special effects. This is the only movie he ever
didn't
directed.
Put his name on it.
Well, he didn't put it on the directing. And here's the thing is, I think he's talented in special effects. And but I don't, he's awful at directing. And that's why he didn't put his name on it. And this is supposed to be a horror film. There's no tension whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right.
And there's some cool deaths. There's some creative deaths. And I think the best scene, the most horror movie-like scene in this is the when the twins die.
Yep.
Yeah, and I thought that was very well done. That's one scene in the entire...
That's a special effect / makeup scene, though.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good.
That's what he's
right?
saying.
Like, from this
they
guy.
also did tension well there. To a certain extent. It wasn't great, but it was competent.
Sure.
Like, a lot of the deaths at the end in the future are just rapid fire.
Almost
he realized he reached the end of the movie and he had to kill off these characters.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not dead yet? Okay, let's get this done with.
But the thing is, even though like when the guy's face gets ripped off, or his entire skin gets ripped off, or like they're competent like death scenes, it's just there's no tension to any of this.
There's no impact or weight. Yeah.
And I have to say, also when they skin the peasant girl alive. Like, that was, I thought, a fairly well
it was solid enough, yes, but
the thing is, like, there is a semblance of style here. It's not worth a 1, but I think that, like, it would be by saying that there's nothing here at all, it would be doing a disservice to what this movie did well.
No,
it was just few and far between. Like, this guy was wise to stick with doing special effects from then on out.
Yeah,
That's
I
what I'm
agree.
saying. Yeah, I'm not saying there wasn't any whatsoever. I'm saying like just wasn't enough, and that was okay, but just not enough for me to give it a 1, but not like, absolutely lacking or terrible. So you're right. We'll give credit where credit is due, just not quite enough for a 1 on our scale.
Zero.
Right. Like it.
Yeah. All right.
That goes on to E with recommendation.
I saw this movie on Sci-Fi Channel when I was younger in the afternoon. And it was fine. And that's as good a recommendation as it's going to get. And that's probably a 0.
Interesting. I'm going to start still something you used to say, or are fond of saying, within its genre, and I'm going to go like deeper than that, within the franchise of Hellraiser. So like,
you get into dirty territory.
Exactly. So it's weird because like, I kind of do recommend it, but also there's at least 2 other Hellraisers that I remember that I have seen that I think are better, or at least more entertaining.
Well, the first 3.
Well, the first one, I would just say watch the first one because that actually is a good horror movie. It still stands. And the third one, with like right before this, like a 94, maybe 2, with all like the CD and the VCR like Cenobites, like that's just at least entertaining, if nothing else. This one is so like up and down in a sense that you can be entertained by it. Like, again, maybe you gather a bunch of friends and like we did and watch it and be amused by it. But is it worth a watch? Am I going to remember this movie in like a couple of days? Not likely. Or am I going to think about it? Almost certainly not. So like, while it might be somewhat entertaining, I think I might again give it a default / soft 0. Like, there are other better Hellraiser movies and certainly many other better horror movies in general.
As someone who has only seen parts of other Hellraiser movies, never seen a full other Hellraiser movie.
I'm sorry, this is your first.
This being my first movie makes me not want to watch any other Hellraiser movies.
I get it. I see why that would be.
That is a full 0 on recommendation.
I know.
The problems with this movie as far as movies go are way too many and just way too glaring that it makes me not want to watch other Hellraiser movies, which kind of sucks. Like I feel like I should still watch the first one.
You should.
You definitely should.
And all the way through.
And everyone else out there
all the way
should.
through and see it for in its full glory and all that. But this movie makes me not want to give a shit about it. And that's a problem.
Fair enough, man. I get you.
So that's got to be a 0 on recommendation. And, certainly don't make this your first Hellraiser movie if you're going to watch it.
The only people that I would recommend this movie to are if you were terrified of the first Hellraiser movie and you need something to take that edge off.
To reverse that? Yeah.
Watch this film and you'll be good. You'll be golden.
Cenobites will never terrify you again, I guess. I mean, that's funny, but I get it. So
is that a 0 or a 1?
Oh, man, I don't even know. Can I do like a halfway point?
No.
Nope. Big one.
That's true. It's a binary system.
Binary, son?
We've decided a long time ago. However, though, like
0.
in
All
theory,
right, 0.
in theory, this was your pick, Rich. But it's funny that you're not really recommending your own pick, by and large. But we've done that before. It's fair enough.
I mean, I had a feeling that I was going to end up not recommending this before the movie started.
All right.
I mean, it's been years since I've seen it, and
we're not upset with you, Rich.
It's fine.
Yeah, you're good, man.
It's just funny.
It's cool. It's cool.
But we're taking away your Halloween
We
pick
also,
next year.
Well, by the way, first of all, Ian, slow your roll because you made us watch Leprechaun in the Hood 2, Back to the Hood.
Yes.
So let's not.
And if you've seen that episode,
But we at least got
know what we're
righteous
talking
indignation out of it.
Yes. Anyway, so that's
I actually like this movie a lot more than that one.
yes. At least it was less offensive.
You know what? That movie was much more offensive. I think they were both just as bad as each other, though.
All right.
So, Ian, can we get the aggregate score?
Okay, so Scott, Rich, and myself gave it a 4. Steve-O gave it a 3.
The proper score.
Mm-hmm.
Giving it a 3.75 overall.
Yeah.
That's actually... That's a good score. I mean, I thought you were going to give it a lot lower.
I was actually aiming for a 2. You guys convinced me of one of these. I don't remember which one.
I thought you were aiming for a 0 outright precast, but
no, a 0. Oh man, I'm still waiting for my 0 movie.
All right, well, it ain't this one, but it's pretty low. This has been a poor configuration of the lamentation box, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the Hellraiser mythology. I don't know.
Yeah. So much like the end of this film, I think we're about to wrap things up.
Pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah. Abruptly, even.
And we're done.
Sure.
So we've thank you for joining us for our MOTS-O-Ween for Hellraiser. And I've been Rich Perry with Stephen Amosi.
Figure out your puzzle boxes.
Ian Manzer.
A jar.
And Scott Thurlow.
And I, of course, always remain Payne. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.